Good morning, everybody. We're live here from the birdhouse, and today we're talking about the different finches and sparrows that you can find in Western New York. And if you're on the East Coast, the same birds will apply to most of you guys, and even some on the West Coast too, actually. So we've got that prepared for you today. As always, you can say hi in the comments. We'd love to know who is on. If you have any questions, you can put those in there too, or just let us know what kind of things you're seeing. It's definitely kind of been feeling like spring out there. So I'm wondering if you've seen any interesting bird behavior with it feeling so spring-like. I saw some house sparrows a couple days ago with grass in their bills and their beaks. It looked like they were gathering some nesting material, which is very, very early, but we're wondering if we might start seeing some of that activity with bluebirds. It's still kind of early for that, but they might start nesting in March. Usually it's not until early April or so around here, but the way it's been going, we might just get some starting early this year. But let's get started. As far as finches go, finches, as far as the group, they have stout conical bills, which are adapted for eating seeds. They often have colorful plumage, not all the time, but they often do. And they occupy a big range of habitats where they are usually resident. So they usually do not migrate like some of the other birds that are in the area. These are some of our finches that we have here in New York. There's the house finch. This is probably one of the most common finches you'll see. They will occupy a range of habitats, including towns and the edge habitat. So edge habitat is kind of the transitional habitat in between, say, woods and a backyard or woods in a field. They thrive in that edge habitat, which there is a lot of. They are common at bird feeders, and they were actually introduced to the East Coast in the 1940s. So the house finches are really a Western species, but they were introduced to the East Coast. They do nest in trees and sometimes in houses, like their name kind of hints at. But most of the time you'll see them nesting in trees. The male is the reddish kind of color here. It's more in the center. And then the female is just brown and kind of plain and striped. But that is our house finch, really common. There's the purple finch, which is going to be more red or more raspberry color than the house finch. They're also usually larger, and they have a larger bill also. They're more common with people in their backyards, usually in the wintertime, but we do have them here all year round. They tend to like more of a forest habitat, and they eat a lot of seeds, and they nest in trees too, just like the house finches. And then there's the American goldfinch. So between the house finch and the American goldfinch, those are going to be your two most common finches that we have here. Between the two, that will make up most of the finches that you see. They like open woodland habitat. They also eat seeds. They eat primarily all seeds. They really don't eat any kind of insects like most birds do. So they are really common at backyard bird feeders, especially if you have Niger feeders out. And they nest really, really late in the season. So usually most of these songbirds start nesting in April, May, and goldfinches don't start until like July. So they nest really, really late in the season. And they also have a very distinct call, if they flight call, which is sometimes sounds like they're saying potato chip when they are flying. So that is one of their distinctive calls, but they are quite chatty. Then there's the pine siskin, and the pine siskin has some yellow on it and is pretty striped. It has a very sharp bill, and they also have a very notched tail, which is one way to identify them. They also like open woodlands. They are seed eaters, so you can get them at your bird feeders sometimes, especially again if you've got the Niger seed or if you have sunflower hearts, they like that. And they also like mineral deposits. So they're known to be on the side of the road going after road salt. So they will eat road salt as well. And they are also one of the birds that are in steep decline. So their populations have plummeted 80% since 1970. It'll be interesting with the breeding bird atlas going on in New York to see if that's changed at all, if there's been any fluctuations locally in their populations. But this is our pine siskin. And then the sparrows, as far as sparrows go, they can look a lot like finches. And really the differences are not something that you would necessarily easily be able to see. Sparrows are very similar to finches, but they have an extra feather and they have an extra bone in their tongue. So it's not stuff that you would easily be able to tell from your backyard. But sparrows, kind of like the finches, primarily eat seed, but they will also eat insects more so than finches do. And they are generally small, brown, plump, brown or gray, with short stubby tails and powerful beaks. This is probably the most common sparrow you'll find anywhere in the US, no matter where you are, the house sparrow. You can find them everywhere. They come to feeders, they nest in houses, they eat seeds, they eat insects, they eat a little bit of everything. And really, really common bird that you'll find if you have any kind of birdhouse out, assuming that the hole is big enough for them to fit inside. You'll probably see some sparrows trying to nest in there. If you put out a bird feeder, you'll probably get yourself some house sparrows. Super, super common introduced species. So they're not a native species to the US, but they've been established here a long time. Then there's the chipping sparrows. So chipping sparrows are pretty small. They have a really brightly colored rufous cap on the top of their head. They are migratory. So right now we really don't have chipping sparrows. They're going to be showing back up around late March, early April. We'll start to see the chipping sparrows back. So right now they're a little bit further south. You can see their range map there. The purple is where they will spend time all year round, but then also in those blue sections, they are where they'll be found also just in the winter time. So you can see, at least where I am here in New York, they are here in the spring and summer for their breeding. We're in their breeding habitat. They're pretty small. They have a really beautiful trilling sound, and they eat lots of seeds. You might see them underneath your feeders. They'll come to feeders here and there. Not super common, but you might find them underneath, especially when they're first migrating in. We also have things called field sparrows. You can find them in open habitats, just like you would find the bluebirds. They have a really clear bouncing ball trill of a call. They eat lots of insects, and they have a small pink conical bill and a rounded head. If you look at the descriptions of different sparrow species, a lot of the times what differentiates them, or what the guides talk about, are the head shape, how long the tail is, how long the legs are. So those are some different ways to help identify some of these different sparrow species, and the bills also. So the field sparrow has a pink bill, unlike the American tree sparrow, which has what's called a bicolored bill. The top is black and the bottom is yellow. They eat a lot of seeds. They like open woodland habitat. We get them here in the winter time. So as we get more into April or so, they'll start going further up north where they breed. They breed way up north. So this is south. Where I am is south for them for the winter. They have no streaking on them, but they do have a dark central spot right in their breast. So right now, if you see a sparrow with some kind of orangish kind of rufous colored, sometimes it's called, on the top of their head, it's probably not the chipping sparrow. It is probably a tree sparrow. Then there's also the fox sparrow, and we'll get them migrating through in the spring and again in the fall. They're pretty big. They like forest habitats, and you can typically see them or hear the sound of them spraying leaves all over as they look around for food. So they tend to rustle around in the leaves on the ground. They are quite large. They have a gray head, but they're also a very reddish colored brown, and they're quite big. They're not quite the size of a robin, but they're much larger than, say, your typical house sparrow. So that is the fox sparrow. You'll probably get these in your backyard if you have any kind of bird feeders out. These are the dark-eyed junco, and we tend to get them more in the winter time. Some people do have them in the spring nesting, but really for us, they are a winter bird. They like a forest habitat. They eat a lot of seeds. When they fly, you can see their white tail feathers, which are very, very visible. That's a good way to identify them. They can be quite variable, especially if you're out west. The juncos can have different color morphs, if you will. And they often come to bird feeders. So that's our little gray sparrow there, is the dark-eyed junco. You might also get white crowned sparrows coming underneath your feeders, especially in migration time. They are quite large as well. They're overall very gray, and they have black and white stripes on the top of their head. And they love bird feeders. If you've got an open hopper feeder or a tray, something big for them to perch on, they'll come to those. But most of the time, I see them on the ground underneath the bird feeders. Same as the white-throated sparrows. They look kind of similar to the white-crowned sparrow, but they're going to be smaller. And they do have the white throat. Sometimes it's not as bright as it's showing in this picture. They have a little black whisker that's above their white patch on their throat. You can often find them underneath your bird feeders. They've got that little yellow patch also in between their eye and bill, which isn't always this bright, but you can usually see some kind of tinge of yellow with your white-throated sparrow. And then there's the song sparrow. And song sparrows we do have year-round where I am, but they're not really singing at this time of the year. As we get more into the spring, they are very, very chatty, and they will sing all day. They like an open woodland habitat. They like that edge habitat too. You can find them underneath your bird feeders here and there. They eat a lot of insects, and they have a lot of streaking on them. So they have a really streaked breast with a black dot, kind of like that tree sparrow that also has the black dot. But the song sparrow will have a lot of streaking on them, which the tree sparrow does not. There's also swamp sparrows. If you spend any time by a pond or a marsh, anything with a lot of cattails, you might find swamp sparrows. They have a really grayish colored face. They're insect eaters, so they eat lots of the bugs that you can find around the water. They have really clear trills that will echo through wetlands, and they also have longer legs than some other sparrow species, which allows them to wade through the water a little bit easier. And then there's some other species that aren't super common year-round, but do migrate through. These are a couple of them. The Lincoln sparrow is one. You can find them by wet meadows and willow trees. They eat a lot of insects. They're often concealed near the ground, so they tend to be hopping around on the ground as opposed to being high up in trees. The back of the head often looks pointed. You can kind of see that in the picture on the top. They have a small bill, and they're kind of a buffy gray color, and they have a facial mustache, which you can kind of see in this top picture here. You can see that on the Lincoln sparrow. So there's a Lincoln sparrow. There's the eastern towhee, which looks a lot different than some of these other sparrow species. The male is more dark, so this is the male on the bottom, and then the female, she still has the same kind of color combination, but she's not as black. She's kind of more of a dark brown, so that the female's on the top there and the male's on the bottom. You can often hear their drink your tea call. It's a really common and distinctive call that you can hear in the scrub habitat, edge habitat. They like the woodland areas as well. And every once in a while, people do get them coming to their bird feeders. I had one in my yard a couple years ago for a couple days, and then it moved on. So eastern towhee is really, really cool. They have that red eye too, which a lot of the sparrows don't. Then there's savanna sparrows. They like wide open grassland areas. So if you're out looking for bluebirds or harriers or short-eared owls, you might get some crossover time with the savanna sparrow. They are here in the spring and summer months. So right now they are further down south, and they'll come up around April. We'll start seeing some savanna sparrows usually. They have a short tail. They have a small head, and they have some yellowish color in between their eye and their bill, kind of like that white-throated sparrow does. They're inconspicuous, but they have high, thin voices. So that is your savanna sparrow. Another type of sparrow you might see out in the open fields or grasslands are going to be grasshopper sparrows. They nest on the ground, and they have a song that sounds like the buzzing of a grasshopper or an insect. So it's a grasshopper sparrow. We also have clay-colored sparrows, which will migrate through the area. They also like scrub habitat. They eat seeds. They're common in the Great Plains, so they're out in the west more commonly. And they're a petite sparrow with a sharp bill and a notched tail. So not your most common sparrow that you'll see. Probably won't see it in your backyard, but if you're out birding, you might just happen upon the clay-colored sparrow or the vesper sparrow. They also like the grassland habitat. So if you are seeing savanna sparrow, maybe you're hearing the grasshopper sparrow, also be on the lookout for vesper sparrow. They eat a lot of insects. They are here in the summer months, and they have a distinct eye ring. So that's one way you can identify them, is if you look around its eye, it's outlined in white. And they also have white outer tail feathers. So those are some of the different finch and sparrow species you can find here in Western or Upstate New York. We do get some other kinds that migrate through, but those are kind of your most common ones that you'll come across, some more common than others. If you've got any questions or comments, you can put those in the comments here. It looks like Jen is on, and she says, good morning. Still getting our regular winter birds daily. Our bluebirds showed up a couple weeks ago. It sounds like there were 5 of them. However, only seeing 2 bluebirds coming to the suet paddle-tail feeder and platform feeders. Thinking about putting up another set of 2 bluebird houses this year. I hope we don't miss our opportunity to get more than one nesting here. This will be our 3rd year having bluebirds. How exciting. Yeah, it can't hurt if you've got bluebirds that are hanging around. I would definitely put out a couple more nest boxes, give them some options as far as nesting, some different options. Our best seller, the most common house that I hear of them nesting in is the sparrow resistant style with the rectangular opening. That's one I would recommend. There's something about it that they just seem to like, and sparrows tend not to like it. It's more shallow. It doesn't have a circular entrance hole. And so it just doesn't have specs that sparrows like, but bluebirds will use that. So that's a good house for the bluebirds if you're looking for a different option. But we do have a whole bunch of different houses here, and you can browse some of them online too. We've got a bunch of them up on our website on thebirdhouseny.com is our website there. Looks like that is everybody's comments and questions for the day. We'll be back on Saturday where we will give you a local birding update and share your photos. But until then, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.